Hi, I'm Dean Otto. Welcome this morning to the Dialogues program at EXPO. Thanks for dragging yourself over here past all of the eye candy to focus here right away in the morning here too. I've been with the Walker Arts Center in the film and video department at the Walker for 21 years. And I just co-curated an exhibition of the work of Natalie Jerberg called The Parade, which was at the Walker Arts Center, went to the new museum, Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, and I do an ongoing yearly series called Artist Cinema at the Walker, too. And today we're going to be joined by Jesper Just. He's an artist and a filmmaker. He's from Copenhagen, where he graduated from the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in 2003. And in addition to doing films, he's staged a live opera, True Love Is Yet to Come, for the Performa Biennial in New York. His work is in the collections of the Guggenheim, the Tate Modern, MoMA, and he's represented by the James Cohan Gallery, which has a booth here at EXPO as well. And his most recent work, Intercourses, from which we're going to see a clip a little bit later, is currently at the Venice Biennale, where Yesper is representing Denmark. And he lives in New York now, too. So welcome, Yesper.
Thank you.
So during this Dialogues program, we're going to see 4 clips of works from throughout Jesper's career, too. We're going to be starting out with It Will All End in Tears, and we're going to see a little clip from the first section of that called A Little Fall of Rain. So I think we'll just start off with this clip. And we stop right before the older man is to burst into song. Yeah. So much has been made about these your very high technical standards for your work and your strong connections between film noir and melodramas. But what sort of films were inspiring to you early on? And this piece is from 2006, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that melodrama has been mentioned a lot, and I'm not really interested so much in melodrama as a reference. I think I'm using maybe these characters' emotional outburst as in a way to maybe break with some cinematic conventions, which could come from melodrama, of course. But in terms of what films, I think there are so many. It's more like film in general. I like to use the language of cinema in order to make the spectator read it in that context. And if it looks like cinema, you most likely would have the same expectations towards the conventions of what is going to happen next. And I like to kind of put this string of open moments together that keeps breaking itself into another open moment or cliche, and hopefully that will make you stop and think, what is it actually I'm watching, and using, because it looks like cinema, but it's actually not really cinema, because there's no plot, there's no story, there's not really a narrative, so it's kind of, there's actually not really going anything on.
So a lot of your early work is marked by these connections between these intergenerational relationships between like an older man and a younger man that is kind of ambiguous. Their relationships are, we don't know whether or not they're father and son or lovers too. What role does that ambiguity play within your work?
Well, I really like that, because in mainstream cinema, there's something you can't have, that is that ambiguity, especially if it's regarding sexuality. It's very important that it's put in a certain box, at least at some point. Right? So, but I'm interested in exactly that moment where you can't really put it in a certain kind of category and say, this is what's going on between these two. And this was actually, it's funny to start with this, because that was the last film I did with this kind of intergenerational male relationship. But I've been working with that for maybe, I don't know, to that point, maybe 6 years. And then I felt I had been exploring that from all kind of angles, and then started to look at other topics, but it was important for me to, especially with men and in cinema, it's always so important for everyone to understand the relationships, and if a car drives, if it's like a road movie, it's important that why these two men together, you have to clear that there's nothing sexual going on, or if because that's too dangerous, and if you don't understand it, you will test it, and then you will see if people get it. If they don't get it, you will change something, and that's what cinema. I mean, that it. You want to make sure that everyone got it in the end and has the same understanding. And I think, well, in the art world, you have to do the opposite. I mean, you have to just throw some questions out there, and not. I don't have the answers, so.
And it's that tension that makes it really interesting, because you don't know what that relationship is too. So it makes you look for more clues, in the ways that those characters are interacting as well. It's really, it's absolutely brilliant too. Also, you had kind of created kind of like a technical family of actors that you consistently use between projects, and also a creative team that, especially for the cinematography in that earlier work. Are you still working with that same type of technical crew throughout?
I worked with the same cinematographer for now 10 years, and we started together. So I think we developed a language together, and I mean, I've had moments where I was almost forced to work with someone else, because he's a very, Jesper Just, he's a very, very successful cinematographer, and is doing a lot of feature films, which is, taking a lot of his time. So, but then I've decided I want to kind of keep that relationship. So I've tried to move things around to keep him on the crew, because it just makes it so much easier when you don't have to talk everything, don't have to explain everything. I mean, you just have like this understanding, and you can, just go right at it. So because we built this kind of language together, I think.
I think it really creates some incredibly strong work too, because it's a lot like Fassbinder or Claire Denis too, who also work in that same manner, where they have a technical team that they have implicit trust in too, and it just makes it easier to have easier to produce more pieces and work very quickly without that as well, too. So music in these early works plays such a strong role. It's kind of like an outlet for emotion, too. And then right around this time, you had also created the opera for Performa, too. So is there any like future interest in working with music or doing live performance again?
Yeah, I've done some smaller things, and this was at the same time as the Performa piece, which we didn't see now, but there's actually this Screaming Men's Choir in the New York Supreme Court that there's this performative thing in later in the film, and I also worked with them for the performance, so that was kind of all coexisting. I've just came to New York at that time in 2006 or 5. Yeah. Anyways, and I think that Screaming Men's Choir came from my own history. I used to play music, but different kind than you might see in some of the films. But I used to play like in a death black metal band, like really. But that was like '89 or something like that. So I have like a background in music, and I did do smaller musical performances lately, and I'm also very much involved in the music in the films, usually always partly arranging the film, the sounds, because it's in a way both what is framing the whole film, but it's also what breaks the expectations. A lot of times I use the music as like a breaker for of both social but also cinematic convention, because music is used so often also to make everyone feel the same, and you shouldn't really realize it's there, so it's this kind of cowardly thing that you can use. I mean, you can kind of cheat people to feel something, and so I like to. I mean, but I like to use the music like with and against that kind of concept. So it becomes also like a protagonist a lot of times. So it's not just background, it also is a lot of times the dialogue between the characters.
So we're going to move ahead to go from like 2006 right up to 2011, and we're going to see a clip from this Nameless Spectacle. But before we do that, we're going to see like a composite version of this. But can you tell us a little bit about how this work is installed and how a viewer experiences this?
Yeah, because the first 5 years of working in film, I just did one-channel films, cinematic, CinemaScope, looking like film, and then at some point, I don't know if partly because I got tired of people keeping asking, when will you do a feature film, or because I see myself as a visual artist, not it's not as just, I'm not just doing this to gain the goal of making a feature one day. So I was starting to think maybe I should include the space and the physical experience more in the work. So now I'm more and more working in multiple channel installations, also with sculptural parts sometimes, but to maybe underline the difference in this physical space that you can. Going to a gallery, you have your body with you. When you sit in the cinema, you're kind of paralyzed and you're just escaping all your troubles. But here, you're kind of more active and experiencing yourself with the piece, and that's what I find interesting. And so this is one of the first pieces where I start to do that, and that's 2 screens. First installed, they were quite big, like I think 60 feet wide, both of them, and then and you stand in the center, and so you can do like this and talk at the same time. So you stand in the so you stand in the you stand there, and so you and there's two characters.
Yeah.
Oh, this is confusing. There are two characters, and they never appear on the same screen. They have their own screen, each of them, and so you cannot. They're never in the same film, but you stand in the center and you connect the two films, and make one kind of narrative, which is actually not there, because you're not able, and you choose yourself which side to look at. So you will also lose half of the experience because you only see half of the installation, because it's impossible to see both. But so this is cheating, seeing it stacked like that, because then you see both sides. But there's also this connection or illusion of connection between the two screens, this voyeuristic
Which plays amazingly, with the themes in the piece. So let's cheat right now and see the clip. And as the piece goes on, she starts to perform for the other man who seemed to be stalking her earlier, too, who's watching from another apartment window across the way, too. So there's an incredible sense of duality in here that changes all the time with a different kind of power structure, too, from the woman feeling menaced, or you're feeling this type of menace, and yet later in the film, she seems to be taking control over this as well, which I really, really find fascinating. So can you tell me a little bit more about all of these different changing aspects throughout the piece?
Yeah, but that's again coming back to the kind of all these moments that keep kind of breaking into another moment, keeping to build up some expectations that maybe you've seen a lot of times before, but then break it constantly. And for instance, the scene that comes after where she's hit by some light from the building across, and also across the space where you stand. She goes into this, what looks like a seizure, but at the same time it also has, I mean, it's somewhere between pain and pleasure, because she also seems to enjoy it. And the way we did that was that it was shot over 2 days, and then first day it was as if she should, she was getting a seizure, and the next day she should act as if she was having an orgasm. So that was kind of intercut. So it's very hard to decipher what is actually going on. It goes in and out of that all the time in that moment, and I like to work on that, and I'd like to constantly play with these expectations. And also another thing is that I don't think many people notice, which is fine, but for me, I use that also for creating the kind of concepts, is that it's the female actor is a very, in France, known transsexual, and I don't think that it's not necessarily important that because she's not playing a transsexual, but I like to. I mean, I use that for my own creativity to write the concept, kind of.
Well, it also plays into that duality too. So, and playing with the ideas of gender too, and moving from one gender to the other as well. So I thought it was incredibly fascinating too. So, and also, you know, in that you get that sense of voyeurism that's playing throughout that piece that we also see moving between other work that we'll have, and we're going to touch more on that in the very last clip that we see as well too. So, but who do you think is really in control in this situation here that you've set up?
Well, as you said, it goes back and forth, but I think at the end, I mean, she's leaving this man behind. I mean, so there is some kind of narrative in this film, I guess, that this guy she got pleasure out of this whole thing, and I think I don't know. It goes constantly back and forth, but it's also in a cinema in a gallery situation, you don't know when people step into the film, so I mean you cannot control that. So and when they leave, so I think which is fine, but so I cannot tell what people experience, and I mean what they choose. So I don't know if that makes sense. But.
And so how close are the viewers usually to, ideally to the screen, if the screens are like 60 feet too, and
there's 60 feet apart as well, so you stand maybe 30 feet away from the screen. I mean, if it's open, you can stand wherever you want, of course.
Right. But it must be almost like kind of overwhelming in some senses to be in that space too, especially with the camera moving and that on those long dolly shots. I can tell
the whole idea came from this old funfair entertainment system that was pre-cinema and kind of also have been suggesting cinema, called Stereorama and Marorama, which was these huge painted scrolls of, like Hudson River or something, and you were on a boat, and then the boat would do like this, and then they would pull the scrolls, so you had the illusion of you sailing, and that was kind of my starting point, and I thought about that whole perspective, and then you traveling in this space, and that's why I was interested in somehow disabling the spectator as well. That you see the whole thing opens with you just see these traveling shots through a park that opens and closes, this built-in narrative that's already there in a like a 1860s park in Paris. And then later you realize that you're actually seeing it from the perspective of a wheelchair, and then it, continues. But it came from that whole, pre-cinema entertainment system.
I think we're going to be moving on to Yano, which is a piece from 2012, and we're going to see a clip from this in a minute. But if you want to see the full piece, it's installed in the video area, which I curated, and it's the centerpiece for that program too. And so, can you tell us a little bit about the site, the Yano de Rio, too, and how you discovered this site?
Yeah. It's in California, and it's the remains of a ruin of a socialist commune or communist commune that was built about 100 years ago. And then it was getting quite successful. Several thousand people moved out there and were self-sufficient, and they had big ideas of how to build this place. And there was this female architect called Alice Constance Austin, I think, and she had this idea of these tunnels under the city that would liberate the women from doing too much domestic work. So there would be this community in the center where all food would be taken care of, and laundry and all that, and then it would just be delivered to the different houses in the city through these underground tunnels, so that the houses were kitchenless, and there was all these kind of ideas. But I mean, the tunnels were never built because before it finished, the neighboring farms were cutting water supply because they were starting to be, I don't know if it was political or they just thought they were using too much water, or they were afraid that this would grow into too big of a city. So they had to leave overnight when the water supply was cut off, and so it was just standing there ever since. And it's this weird utopian dream that never finished. So it was something that is no more, and also never really was. And I wanted to work with that and try to film and make a monument in a way that was kind of disintegrating itself by just standing there and pouring rain on itself. Well, we can see that in the clip. I don't know what clip it is, but
okay. Well, let's see the clip right now, and then we'll jump back and talk about it for a little bit. So you have this rain machine kind, or a setup that's usually used for films as well too, and coming down on the ruins here, slowly kind of destroying itself too. And here's the thing that would have kept the commune alive too. So I thought that was incredibly fascinating to put those things back together as well too. So. Can you tell a little bit about the nature of that kind of sense of preservation of this idea too, of this space?
Yeah, I mean, well, my first point or idea was this: that once you build a structure, the structure is already fighting nature, and it's starting to disintegrate. It's kind of the struggle between man and nature right there in in simple. I mean, not only there, but any building. And I thought that was interesting. And then, yeah, exactly as you said, then using what could have fed this place is now killing it. And I just thought it was kind of ironic to use this because it is in California, so using this film effect. But at the same time, also building, you have this tunnel that is not the tunnels that was supposed to be built under the commune, but the community it was downtown LA where they actually have these tunnels between the civic buildings, which was kind of funny that they in a way took. I don't think they took the idea from Alice, but still, it's kind of the idea of connecting this underground or these like, the town hall, the court, and everything underneath. So that's where it was shot. But using that as that there is this machine standing down there and just making this monument that is kind of killing itself. As we see it, I think the reason why I was interested in this communistic commune was, of course, where it was placed, but also my granddad was like a Danish. He was the editor of a Danish Communist Party, so I have that in the family, and I know he saw everything also fall apart, and the wall come down, and so it was. So I have an interest in those things also to kind of investigate that because it's part of my backstory in a way.
But it's so interesting to see the woman, constantly. This is kind of almost like a failing attempt to try to keep this history alive and this space alive.
That's like a Sisyphean kind of idea of her or just keeping a status quo in a way, just make the place stand.
So we are going to go to the very last clip from here, and it's your newest project too, called Intercourses, which was at the Venice Biennale as well too. And what we're going to see is once again is like a composite version. But can you tell a little bit about when you were asked to create because you're representing Denmark at the Venice Biennale, like the kind of genesis of this project as well, and how it's installed.
Yeah, so when I got the invitation, it's of course it's a great honor, but it's also such a weird concept. This kind of Olympics or whatever that you're representing a country in art, and it comes from like an old tradition, and you have like all the big imperialistic pavilions on the top of the hill in the Giardini, like the British, the German, and the French, and then the rest of the pavilions are kind of small around. But this whole setup was kind of so odd in a way, I think. So that was my starting point. That you represent a country and you have a physical structure in another country standing there with the country's name, and it's always there, and it's only used like once a year. Every second year the architect Biennial, the same thing, and then every other, it's the art biennial. But so I started with that very building and that idea of this representation, and within the Danish Pavilion there, it's kind of like a joke. It's two buildings put together. It's an old neoclassical building, and then in the 60s they needed more space, so they added this modernist yellow brick building, which looks like some domestic house in the suburbs. So this is weird. And then on the other side, you have this bombastic entrance with columns. So it's a funny mismatch in that way. So that was my starting point, and then I was just thinking about elaborating about what or where to go, and then I started to think about and read about replica cities that's getting more and more common, especially in Asia and the Emirates, where you copy Western cities, not like a homage. It's not a homage to Western culture. It's just more like speculation in city planning. That if we building so many new cities, so they probably run out of ideas eventually. So they kind of, let's build Paris, and for instance, so there's this partly copied city that is partly a copy of parts of Paris in China, 2 hours outside Shanghai, just next to Hangzhou. And I decided to go there, and then I was thinking a lot about how to shoot this, and I then thought there's been so much about geopolitics and all that, so I didn't really want to go in there. Of course, you can't avoid those layers if you start shooting in a place like that. But I then decided to shoot this as what it's trying to present or represent. So I wanted to shoot as if it was in Paris with French actors at this place. It's that's part of it, and then there's the whole other part, which is like a sculptural part, architectural part that I built physically down there that we don't see here, with walls obstructing but also guiding you through the whole pavilion. These concrete walls that are kind of very raw, and then inside you have, the films are black and white. Inside you have also concrete walls leading you around, and here and there you have these bamboo growing with purple grow lights that spill the lights up to the black and white films, so it has this shade of purple on the films as well.
And each of the shots are different sizes and in different rooms as well. So
yeah, so it's very much about you. You can choose which films more or less to see first, and it's very different sizes, all different formats, and the version we have here is all stacked, so it's kind of not really giving you the idea of how it is, but the reason why it also works like this is because there's one film that creates the soundtrack for all the other films, but you don't see that film till the very end, and then it makes sense what that sound came from. That is, in a way, a mediator for these characters connecting through this kind of cardboard city. I wanted to use the city as something that connected three men, so it becomes some kind of mediator, kind to insist that there was some kind of, I don't know, poetry in there, connecting them, and it's done by, I don't know if I should talk about that afterwards, but I can also say it now. So there's this whole old tradition in Denmark of it's called the dead bricklayer. In Danish, and it goes like at least 500 years back. And if the developer didn't treat you right, the workers, especially the bricklayers, would take like a revenge, and they would somewhere they would hide a bottle, beer bottle, in the walls, and open where the mouth would just be in the level with the wall, and then you couldn't really see it. But once the wind was hitting it in the right angle, you would hear it, and it would make the house sound haunted. So forever, this guy would have this reminder of him being a rat. Yeah. So.
All right. With that, let's cheat again and see the composite version of this installation. You also have that sense of voyeurism too, with the listening in through the walls too, trying to locate the. What do you think that they're trying to locate, actually? Or
well, for me, they're connecting. It's just the building or the bottles is just mediator for them to kind of connect. But it's also that actually coming from the film from France, the one with the 2 screens, where we didn't see that part, but there's these 2 projects, and they're kind of, housing projects, and you have lights going back and forth between the building and creating this seizure in that woman, and so the building is also performing in a way and being kind of interacting with the characters, and the same here. I was thinking about how to make that place perform. So that was giving it this kind of voice, and it's not necessarily a critique of the developer of this place, because I don't know any of his history of how he's been treating the workers. It's not so much about that specific place, but it was to give that place to give those buildings a voice. So we placed like hundreds of these bottles in throughout the city, giving that illusion that they had been built in and making. Because when you see the film separately, because now it is kind of very confusing, but if you see just the one with the men in the apartments just listening, you get the feeling that they kind of almost connect in some kind of subtle emotional way through the walls, and you don't know yet what those sounds are. It's just kind of because you haven't seen that film with the bottles until you later enter that room.
You know, when I first watched this, I was reminded of Zizanka's film from 2004, The World, which is it's a narrative film that's shot in this. It's a theme park with all of the major monuments of the world all put together, so that you could go there with your friends and have your picture taken in front of the pyramids or the Eiffel Tower or something else, and never go anywhere outside of the world really, and or never travel, but have a sense that you've been everywhere too, and this kind of to have this kind of very culturally loaded spot here as well in this architecture. And I think if you look closer at this too, there's these subtle hints too of like you see Chinese script or writing, throughout this as well too. But to have that kind of sense placed within this, which you referred to as like the Olympics of art in a way in there too. I think in the Venice Biennale is absolutely fascinating. So
yeah, I mean, it was not so much about China per se. It was more about where we are right now, and the film you're talking about it's a bit different because it is a fun fair. This place is just built for people to live in, and it's not a tourist attraction. It's a lot of wedding photos are taken there from locals, but it's not something that people travel to. Maybe more and more, because now I just saw that it was on Vice TV also. So maybe now it's going to be huge,
a huge tourist destination, bigger than Paris.
It's only like a third occupied. I mean, the rest is empty. So it's also so sad. It's this weird phenomena that's still being built, and eventually it will have 100,000 people living there. But because the materials are so poor, it's already falling apart. And they started constructing this in 2007. So it's like a ruin in progress. They're kind of building here, and then it's falling apart in the other end. Which is so weird. But again, it was not a homage to like Western culture. It's just like speculation in selling apartments. And they have the Eiffel Tower, and
You referenced the light within the black and white images too, but why did you make the decision with this piece to shoot it in black and white?
Partly because first of all, if you see this place in color, it's very revealing, and it shows right away that this must be like not Paris. And once you do black and white, it's kind of washes that out a little bit. And then also, I wanted to give it some kind of old French new wave feeling, like Truffaut or something like that. Have that kind of feel when you watched it, and on top of that, to connect it to the sculptural part with the purple colors, kind of connecting the plants with the images. So that was also like an aesthetic. Yeah.
Okay. And there was also kind of a poster component to this piece as well, and another kind of collaboration that you did with that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a graphic department in New York called Projects, who made this poster project outside Venice, and these very mysterious posters from this place with this weird sign on, and they were just placed without, I think, 7 different cities, and I think all the info that was on there was a website, and so you would have to go and look for that website to actually find out what this was. But that were nice posters. But that was like Projects' own thing that they did. Yeah.
Well, I know that you have a flight that's going to be taking off fairly soon, but I think we can take like one question from the audience too before we have to go. Does anybody have a question, comment too? I can't see anybody, but but I just want to remind you that Yano is installed down in the video area, which is on the other end with the burlap-looking pod, and you can see that piece in its entirety on there too. And the other selections of work from the submissions are all playing off of the ideas that are brought up in Yano too, with politics, decay, the questions of preservation as well too. So thematically, they all work together, and they all were inspired by your work. So.
Oh, didn't know that.
So if there aren't any questions, there's one, Michael.
I saw the presentation in Venice, and I thought it was very powerful and effective. You obviously thought a lot about the building because you changed the building. Kind of a mysterious sensation when you walked in. I'm wondering if you gave thought to whether or not that would be installed elsewhere, how that would work, or how it would install elsewhere.
Did everybody hear the question too? It's whether or not the and this is being taped, so I'm going to repeat it too, so everybody can hear it too. But the question was about whether or not the Intercourses, which is the piece from the Venice Biennale, could be installed in another place. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the installation, the place suggested the installation 100% in Venice, and first I tried to avoid this impossible pavilion because it's really a weird mismatch. It's made for a different time, for white sculptures standing. So first I thought about how many rooms can I shut down, and then it just ended up with, I was just left with one room, and that was really just too restricting. So instead I made the concept that I had to use every single part of the pavilion, even the tool shed or whatever it's called. That's the exit. But so in terms of all the concrete structures that were built to first kind of keep you out in a way, and then also once you find the entrance, somehow you experience the building kind of sideways, and you walk up the side and through a little garden, in through a window, and then you go through, and then you eventually end out through this tool shed. So I was very interested in the whole experience of being dislocated once you exited and not really knowing where you were. And if that's possible elsewhere, I will have I will show it other places, so we'll have to find out how that will work. Maybe it's going to be without the concrete structures and just be 5-channel. Of course, it will lose a lot, but I'm definitely interested in keeping the architectural part. But I don't necessarily think it can work everywhere. But I think parts of it can be adaptable. But it is very much tailored for that space. That's true. So we'll have to see. I'm thinking about it right now. I wasn't thinking about it before, so it's also very hard to sell. So.
Well, thanks, Jesper. Thanks for coming to Chicago. Thanks for coming to EXPO, and thanks for being with us this morning too. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks.
It was a pleasure.